Okay, we are back with Odin, and if you're catching this and you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, I suggest going back to part 1 and part 2. It was long, and I just figured I needed a little break, and that was a good thing to do because I was able to get some food. I don't know if my stomach's still gonna growl. And let's just dive right back in. So where we left off, we really left off with what it meant to change our thinking about the value of any given thing and what it means to not feed into that consumer, take the needle out of the vein, basically, is what we were sort of discussing. And we talked a little bit about how what it meant to take that new path. It began with like the spiritual stuff and the thinking and, and what you place value on, because that's really what is like the biggest thing is when we talk about your energy being taken, your time being taken, like the war zone really is over your attention, because energy goes where attention is, energy flows. And so there's a war over your attention. So you're going to take command and control over your attention in terms of what your priorities are. And when the last video talked a lot about like the right kinds of like, I could go over it, but Odin's like, would you please? So I'm just gonna begin. And so right now what we're talking about is like, this is to the changing our thinking about what is valuable and what is going to nourish us and heal us and bring our inspiration to the fore. Changing what we think about that is the first step. But Odin, and we're talking about good and evil. And we're gonna talk about what it means to be in a society where all of these demands, these consumer demands are placed on you, and what it means to flick these demons off of your back, and what it means to work towards a goal of being free, truly being free. Because this is not in the same way that Odin was like, slavery in tears is still slavery. We have to look at this one that's eating off of his chest. I don't even know if you can see it. In place of a heart, there's this hungry little monster. And so like a lot about taking control over our desires and what we desire, and shifting what should be demanded and what is valued, in terms of what did he say, supply and demand. So we're going to be looking at what it is to be in this situation, and this is maybe one of these represents each one of like your bills or something like that, and what it means to change what you work for towards freeing yourself. So let's get right into that. And after that, I hope we have to, we're going to move this way and sort of look at what this tower actually ends up being. Okay, so let's take a look. And so for you to change the way that you work, think about your attention as currency. And so you can, and Odin is saying you may be poor in terms of currency, but your attention, you're rich with your attention. No one can ever make you poor. The poverty of attention comes when we give our attention away without having any intention about where we're giving our attention. And he says, so, think of your attention as the most valuable currency, instead of, because that's, again, related to the human potential is the most valuable thing on earth. Your potential is your divinity. And connecting with divinity is creating. And so, yeah, participating in creating is connecting with the creator through that. That's your avenue right there. And so when we look at these demands which are meant to take our attention off of divinity, and bring our attention to like consume the consumer, that which is consuming our divinity. Yeah, to bring our attention towards that which is consuming our divinity, and then intentionally take our attention back. And so let's just take a look at what it means to work in a different way. There's a lot of opposition to this message. Like, I work with energies and spirits all the time, and lately with deities, and there's always this something, right? And when you are in spiritual fields, you encounter stuff where you're like, no, that's tangibly, like, invisibly alive, like, and it has the ability to do things. You actually encounter like these proof, of some of this magic. And the amount of opposition to this series with Odin has been like, it's been a remarkable effort, and all of them have had some opposition, but this is like, I think it's really important for us to think about the fact that there is some kind of war at play, and it might not be like, it might not be good and evil as we've taught to be seen good and evil, you know, with scary monsters that are there to, you know, tempt you and then scare you back to the main consumer, God that consumes everything. And that just came through. that we, oh my gosh, I lost it. So when you're channeling, if you're starting to learn how to do this, you're going to notice that you will fall out of a channel when you experience that moment of like, well, what if someone disagrees? What if someone hears this and they don't like it? Because we just lost that little, I'll get it back. All right. So wherever that was going, we'll get it. We are moving between these two spaces. We are in this transition point, and we do have a tremendous amount of power, and we take our attention back. And the war of good and evil, as you know, as it reframed, is really what is keeping you from expansion and growth and operating in your giftedness. Anything in opposition to that, and anything in opposition to human potential as a pure co-creation with the divine, that is the name of the devil. And any way that you know, personifies itself, any way that puts on a mask and a hat and a cloak and dances around, like, that's what evil actually is. So anything in opposition to your growth is, you know, is the oppressor. That is the opposition. And so what it means to understand that we are in a level of spiritual warfare over your attention and whatever's demanding your attention, and that it's not just like an arbitrary thing, like where your attention is stolen and enslaved. That's a spiritual problem. That's a spiritual war. And so when we step into what it means to like not fear evil, first of all, we know who we are, we know what we deserve, we know what we're capable of. When we honor that and we understand that we have a connection to the divine and that we are divine, and in the creation process, you know, are able to step into our full potential. When we understand what's at stake here, and we understand that there is an actual war over your attention is something you control. And so we can very quickly move out of slavery into enlightenment. And that doesn't mean that the external structures will change around you, you know, in relationship to what the structures as you take them off on the inside. But this is about your attention, and you can very quickly step into this space, because what are these little demons? And we can call them responsibility, but responsibility is not supposed to take your potential. That's not a fair exchange, and it's not something that your creator would have created you to have to exchange. Life force, in order to, like, you know, so that the, you know, like, you're supposed to be able to like be led by the spirit, like into ways and creativity around finding your needs met. He's like the hunter-gatherer culture, and we're not putting that above the agriculture culture. He's saying these are all innovative human ways of feeding themselves, where they learned how to feed themselves. They had what it takes to get, they have a natural way of being fed. They know how to do it. They can figure it out. You know, and in nature, your natural asset to meeting your needs is your ability to figure it out. That tree makes food I can eat. I'm going to make more of them. You know, I know that there's an energy exchange, you know, and transformation from life to life, you know, in terms of sustenance, and that sustenance will bring itself before me, like, and I will honor it, and I will bring it into my body, and it will live through me, you know, in energy. Like, this is this whole relationship to nature that we have, where we are completely capable of taking care of ourselves. How are you going to feed your kids? You're going to figure it out. So take the fear out of that. And take the fear out of, and it's like, well, what about the structures that provide me the groceries to the grocery store? If tomorrow the grocery stores failed, you would figure it out. Why? Because you're not letting your kids starve. You're gonna eat whatever the heck you can find and do. And sometimes when we're pushed, you know, consumption and this consumer God and this consumer capital, like, it's really a structure we're talking about. You know, it's all about this idea that of dependence. When you were born with the ability to figure it out. And that's why we've gotten as far as we have gotten. You know, when you understand that you are the cumulative magic of your entire ancestral line passing forward, their methods of figuring it out, their methods of survival, you are the recipient of all of that epigenetic work. Everyone who survived to give you what they survived with, and to show you how they survived. Every single one of your ancestors worked to give you the value that you have in quality of knowing how to survive and knowing how to innovate and knowing how to create. You are the pinnacle of all of their efforts. You do not need to worry that you won't be able to figure out, because you might not be able to overcome the structure of oppression. But should the structure of oppression no longer govern you, and you find yourself operating through creativity for ways in order to meet the needs that you have, probably through the structure as it crumbles, doesn't mean you have to stop. You know, you can go and live in the middle of nowhere and be fine. You can go off grid and not be in the structure, and you will find how to, and you will creatively figure out how to take care of yourself. You can, absolutely. It's a lie that you have a level of dependence, but at the same time, to the extent that you do have dependence and you are working your way through these structures, you will have the creative ability when you are in alignment, when you are learning, teaching, governing, and embodying holiness. That's the kind of the path. Anything in opposition to that is in opposition to your growth. If you're doing that, you will come into a magic within yourself, reconnecting to the divine. You will, like in your ancestral line, I mean, Odin really comes back to that. You know, you will have the magic of your people with you to help you survive and thrive. You inherit that. That is your inheritance. Don't let these systems talk you out of your inheritance. They talk you out of your inheritance every time they tell you you have to depend on something else in order to get your basic needs met. And while we have a structure to work through at this point, we have to say, like, truth and lie. Is it true that you require a house and heating and computer access at this point? Absolutely. But inside of yourself, in your core, you don't say, I need to do this to survive, because you don't need to do this to survive. You're choosing to use your creative capacity in order to bring these things into your life so that you can work with them to create more and find a way and figure it out. But ultimately, you know, when it comes to abundance, we need to get our heads out of the wrong place with all of this, because when you think that you can't survive without X, Y, and Z, when you are the survival of your entire ancestral line, like, you've got it. And so this is really speaking to this idea of, like, everything you make gets immediately eaten by this, like, you know, by these demands, by all of these little demands. Every single time you see this, he's trying to create something. You know, he's trying to sort of push this guy away because he wants to bring this nourishment into his body. He wants to bring the fruits of his labor and his nourishment and this energy exchange into his life. And he's got to hold this one back, and this other one is jumping out trying to get what is produced for nourishment for this person. That's this horrible cycle. This is this dance, you know, this is a possession. You fear evil possession? What is this? What do you think that is? You know, and it doesn't mean that you're taken over by demons, but we want to disempower and we want to starve those demons out, basically. Like, that's really Odin's call. And so, you know, when it comes to working together, you know, and this is where we bring our magic in, and this is where we bring the power of prayer / spells. He's got them as the same thing. You know, how we help each other in the beginning may not be with physical resources just yet, because the physical resources, somebody is holding hostage of the physical resources. Someone has all the resources while everybody else has to, you know, fight each other for, you know, in exchange to get their basic needs met. So when we think about what it means to work together and to give to each other and to change this, and to step into the change and to let the tower fall. And what does it mean to let that tower fall? The tower that keeps you in an endless cycle of consuming and being consumed yourself. When you let that tower fall, the first thing that we can do at this moment is when we recognize the name of this demon. This is not control of like, you know, nature. You know what I mean? When we recognize that this is just a fiend, that this is a monster, that this is feeding off of you, that this is a kind of cannibalism, a kind of tiered slavery. When we call it what it is and we work together, we first start by we starve it by managing our attention and making sure that it's in alignment with the growth, with your growth and your innovate, like you being able to create for yourself and have that work for you. You know, when we know that we no longer want to have, you know, status as being what's going to free us, you know what I mean? Or give us what we need in the way of like a license to our creativity. When we no longer need status to give us a license to our creativity, when we just go ahead and take it, we start by working, we work in a spiritual capacity. We begin to connect with our ancestors. We begin to call in our magic, and we begin to make prayers or spells or however it is that you take the divine, work with the divine and create something new. And be very clear, you are responsible for your magic. and what you visit upon others will be visited upon you. And when you realize that that is just the law of it, that doesn't mean that you don't have space to fail and grow and make mistakes and grow. You do. There's a whole built-in something with that. There's all kinds of natural modes of compensation, you know, and again, to access your gods and the power of your gods and that connection, you first have to do the work of energetically and spiritually releasing those who you have taken access from. And this is all done in prayer or spell work. It's all about taking the divine and making it real. And you do that with words. Words have a lot of power. So as you release those who your ancestors have possibly enslaved, everyone has had many lifetimes in many different places. And in addition to like what we inherit, our ancestors did all kinds of craziness. Even if you don't come from a line where there's slavery, like with that particular tribe, that tribe probably has something, you know, someone's brother, you know, was enslaved to the neighbor who owed, you know, a piece of meat, whatever it ends up being. You want to take responsibility for that ancestral line from a spiritual place, because just as you inherited their magic with and the gifts of their magic, part of the gifts of their magic in you is to do the undoing, not just the doing, but to also do the active undoing within yourself of colonization. I guess that's what it is. And the active doing of like releasing, you know, compensating. I now compensate those energetically, and it's not taking, and that's not taking energy from you to give somebody else energy and then you have less. Again, that's the lie of the consumer cycle. You have an endless bounty of goodwill resources and blessing resources when you're tapping into the divine and you're saying, in co-creation with the divine within me, I now release everybody who has been bound by the magic of my ancestors in all ways that they have been bound, as I release myself from all ways in which I have been bound. And I release their gods onto them to find them and to bring them into their arms and to heal them and to help them learn their magic, just as I call back my gods. That this is how we start, and this is how we begin to hold each other spiritually, and in that spiritual change of mind and in that spiritual change of intention and that using those words to do that magic, we begin to, our gods are rising, you know, and the truth of our individual magic and our human potential, because our different gods and our different forms of magic through our families, they hold each other up. This is where human potential is at its most sacred and its most manifest, when everybody is operating out of their giftedness, and the pinnacle of their survival magic is the most precious resource that is then put in cooperation with others to lift us all up. This is rapture. This is salvation. And this is not depending on the external structures to do the work for us. This starts spiritually. This starts in your bedroom with your prayer beads or however you do it. And it ends as a lifestyle wherein we are oriented around lifting everyone up. And that's the work of it. And so Odin says, like, you know, right now, the only thing you're responsible for is to begin to grow and to heal as you grow and as you learn. And so when we see that this tower is falling, that this conflict exists, let's take a good look at that, because we are in between these two places. And this right here is where this is the battleground between you being enslaved and you being able to step into who you are and operate from that position. You know, so we are right here, and so this is what's going on, and we're going to learn about it right now. So I'm actually going to move these cards out, and I'm going to pull directly from this. And if you hear the garbage, then hopefully it's not too loud. If it is, it is. Okay. So let's get, you know, so the whole point of what we're talking about, the whole point of this reading is really stepping out of this being enslaved, stepping into your power and taking dominion over your attention and your growth. And that putting down this heavy armor is changing your priorities and changing your view on what brings pleasure and joy and fulfillment. And deciding that it's not escaping. Carrying the structure on your back only to try and escape it isn't pushing. You know, the flowers aren't the barrier. It's what you're carrying. And so let's go ahead and look at what this tower ends up being and what this conflict ends up being and what our place in it is and our roles and all that stuff. Whew. I'm excited about this reading, by the way. I haven't watched it, and believe me, I don't really, when I say I don't retain much of when I channel, I really don't. I'm really, look at the devil and the knight. This is the fight that we're talking about right here. Okay. And it's really the fight over, you know, it's the fight over our potential. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. We're back with this guy. And this guy, okay. Okay, Justice on the bottom of the deck. That's beautiful. So, I'm going to get some Oracle cards with ease. And I'm being, okay. I'm being told to grab a deck. I'm going to clear it. Okay, with Odin. Alright, so let me just clear it. Sometimes it's a little bit of a process, just a little bit, but not much. I usually do all the decks beforehand, but there's something that wants to be brought in through this. That okay, there it is. Actually, I'm gonna put this, yeah, co-create with spirit on the bottom of the deck. I'm also gonna grab some of these because, so I just bought this and they came in a clear bag and I was so annoyed, but it is what it is. I'm not really able to look. But each of these is gonna get over here. So we are working with Odin. I'm hearing like Rune Master, Master of the Runes. Okay. So this is it's in reverse, but it's about depth, and so it's the lake. And so I'm being shown that this conflict may seem like it is like so huge and so massive and so big, but it has no depth. And so, you know, while we might be standing on, oh wow, you know, this image came through in somebody's reading. I'm gonna just bring it through though. You know, while we may be standing on a frozen lake that is cracking, what we need to know about this transition is that there's no depth to this, and it's not gonna be much. That it's scary. The thought of it is, oh my gosh, we're gonna sink, we're gonna be frozen, we're gonna be underneath the, but to understand that the depth of the opposition is not, you know, as this crumbles, it's actually not, it's nothing to really fear the crumbling of, but let me just do a little bit more on this. So we're gonna get some cards here, and I'll find out more in a second. Be fearless and bold. All right. Nothing is wasted. Okay. And watch and wait. All right. And, you know, so for the first thing in the lay a solid foundation, because here's what's going on. The foundation that we're standing on it is crumbling. Nobody can really deny that at this point when we look around. And Odin is saying your magic is starting to reveal itself to you. The sacred is starting to show itself to you, and the fact that, of course, we're interdimensional. And of course, once we begin experimenting with like the magic of our, and so in a sense, Odin is saying, you know, science is the magic of your people right now. It's pretty shallow, but you're starting to push it into the realm of magic. Because in the same way, there's always a poor substitute. Yes, science is like good at explaining things, and it's right, and this is something that you should do the work on. But ultimately, it's a poor substitute for magic. Ultimately, like, medicine is a poor yeah, not that you shouldn't go to the doctor, we're not there yet, but like, you know, this idea that like medicine is a poor substitute for magical healing, you know, and in the future people will be very clear about what heals, and it's not necessarily chemicals. And so there's this way in which, and that does not mean don't go to the doctor, please do not think that that's what that means, but like there's this way in which, like, as all of the foundations of our institutions are beginning to crumble under the reality that there is something more, that there are, you know, unidentified things flying around in the sky quite like without question, that there's more than just what we see, more than just what meets the eye. That is what's confronting these structures. That is what's making these structures fall over. These encounters with magic and being like, wait a minute, that's definitely a spirit. You know what I mean? Like, these are these moments when we learn that the lies that we've been told that are meant to hold us, and the lies that we've been told about our control over the exterior world. And this is where Odin is like, listen up. What you understand about your control over the natural world is an illusion. And it's as much an illusion in terms of you can't control the weather, you know, as it is like if you can stand in your power and create an energetic field of protection around yourself that protects you from things that are trying to feed off you or influence you. Absolutely 100%. That is spiritual hygiene. You should do that. You should learn how to clear. And you should be clearing. That's just good spiritual hygiene. And it's just a good habit. Like, you want to wash off the dirt that you pick up. It's the same thing. It's not like these things are like really, like the dirt you pick up has little microbes. They don't eat off of your skin. They're not dangerous. They're not changing who you are. But you want to clean yourself because you have the ability to do so. And in the same way, spiritually, you're going to pick up stuff. And you have to be mindful of the fact that there are things eating off of your energy, that there are things that are there to agitate you, to make more of an energetic, you know, they want your magic. They don't have your creative capacity. They can't connect to the divine and co-create with the divine and use their magic in that way. But they can try and use your power to fight and manipulate and drive you to consume and make you feel inferior. And, you know, that's what that is. And so spiritual hygiene and making sure that you're not being influenced by these energies that tell you that, like, when you're feeling worthless, what the heck is going on around you? Call that a demon and say, get out. You identify the feeling. It's not intelligent, it's a feeling. And you find a way to, like, either compassionately move it. There's a whole thing on this. What is the reading called? It's the Mary Magdalene reading. I could explain that, but then I'd be taking away this time from Odin, who's like already like, excuse you. So we're in this point where we're going to be laying a new foundation. And so I'm going to take a break and have a glass of water so that I can get the channel back. This is an interesting process. One day I'll teach how to do this. Everybody can, by the way. Let me just have some water. So when it comes to letting the tower fall, when it comes to changing your priorities, when it comes to changing how you allocate your resources, while it comes to looking at your intention in relationship to your attention and taking control over your attention, that's all that we're doing in terms of starving out the enemy, the opposition, and that tower will fall. Be fearless and bold about these activities, and they will build on each other. And we're seeing that these institutions are failing around us, but we're going to be doing our own thing while that happens. And that's what it means to lay a solid foundation. And so, you know, when we look at what it means to have been giving so much of our potential away to a system that wants to make you into a tool instead of the living, breathing, divine life that you are. And that this is the ancient family tree that you are. They want to stick a spike into it and tell you, no, you're not anything but the spike. That's all you're good for, is what you can produce for me. This is the false god. This is the consumer right here, who's stopping your growth and stopping your potential by telling you that this artificial stuff, this is the you, not this whole line of life and survival. But that nothing is wasted is critical for understanding, because this is about the journey. Okay, this is a rune that speaks of the road, of the ride, of the journey. You know, part of the journey for us as individuals right now, in the moment in time that we actually find ourselves in, at this apex of like shift around what is actually out there that we don't see. That, by the way, those are powers to contend with, and for us to think that we just like snap our fingers and like, you know, that's not really how it works. Learn, grow, incorporate your magic into what you do. You don't have to be afraid of evil, because it's all there for the purpose of taking your attention, and you are learning how to control your attention. That is learning how to use your magic. You're going to have phases of initiation, and as you see, you will be compensated with the strength and the ability to understand, or teachers around you that can help you with the process. You just have to be willing to learn, because nothing is wasted. Everything that you have up to this point, and you may be saying like, how can you tell me that now, after I've given like the last 60 or 70 years. I mean, and I can feel the age range with this group. You know, people coming in and saying, I gave my whole life to this whole thing, this whole mess. I've been giving all of my potential and my life force and my creative capacity and my connection to God to those, like, I've only had this much for myself, and all of this has been eaten already. I'm just now discovering that I am like much more, and how am I supposed to actually be my ancestors and like inheritance and in the world and bring that line of wisdom like forth? How am I supposed to do that from this position? Well, nothing is wasted, and we don't give up. You can go back. You know, what's on the bottom of this deck? The student. Oh, I forget what it was before. But you know, that magical thinking, that childlike way, you can grow younger. Odin is saying you can grow younger. Can you wish away your diseases with manifestation of high vibes? Like, that's no, Odin says. That's not how it works. You learn, you teach, you gain magic from these places, and you incorporate that into your transformation, and you do learn how to heal yourself. And it is a spiritual process, but you can't skip the journey, and you can't skip the stops and the divine detours, and you can't think of it as being just to like, I'm going to do all of these things and so that I can then it's not escapism. It's being very present in yourself and in your position. Like, you look around, you're there, you're not disassociated. You know, you may be, your psychic gifts are not reliant on disassociation. The only reason that you think so is because of a lot of like false dogma around how much of your brain you're allowed to use in order to be a good slave. And that when you have the time to explore and go into these like states of being and meditate and commune with that divine aspect of yourself that exists outside of the body, that's like the beginning of learning. And the opposition to that, the things that are literally their job, is to call you to start to play with your magic and then scare the crap out of you so that you run back to an organized religion. Once you understand that that's the whole game, the game isn't to scare you because it likes to. The game isn't to hang out and make you doubt your divinity and make you doubt your spiritual authority. That it for like nothing. It's doing it in a larger purpose, like as above, so below. There's an organized thing going on. And so, you know, anything that's against you, like in your divinity, is wanting to take your magic, wanting to take what you produce, wanting to eat it, wanting to consume it and put it into a consuming cycle until it consumes the entire earth, frankly. And you know, it's funny because Odin keeps on showing me Nephilim, and I gotta look that up at a certain point. But nothing is wasted. Everything that you have found in your journey that has gotten you to this point, even if you thought that all you were capable of is surviving the pain of this artificial structure that you've been placed in around what it is that it means to meet your needs, the earth right here and the rain supports the needs of the tree. But this has really been an impediment, making you think that you have to like exchange your life force for the water. And so even if this has been your experience, that's an experience that whatever you create is your offspring. It doesn't necessarily have to be people. It can be, and that's a big creative endeavor, and that's a tremendous part of what it is to be in your divinity, is to parent. But you know, that doesn't mean that something that you create right now won't be something that is passed on as a legacy, as the magic that you have been perfected with your life and your ancestry, that can be passed on through knowledge, through wisdom, through teaching, through interactions. You know, everything that you have to offer is still incredibly valuable, and none of it is wasted. And learning about how to use your magic and what your magic is, it's not going to take you 15 years because it's your natural state of being. And so you take the journey that you've had and you put your magic with it and you create something new. And that's something that only you can create and that the world needs. And your potential is godlike, even if you only have a couple of years, honestly. And you don't, and that's not with age. No one knows how much time we have in a given cycle. So every single morning you should wake up and think about, like, I'm here to participate in the magic of creation, and how can I place that intention behind what I do with my attention? And you don't have to live like a monk. Pleasure in your experiences and being present with those experiences. You're going to prolong your life by learning how to live this way. But for someone to say, I've aged too much to be of any consequence, a 15-year-old with 3 years left is in the same position that you are. And it has nothing to do with your age. And each cycle is different. And so we want to get that consumer, because your potential, you know, grief and aging's the grief of losing all of that potential, but it's perceiving that you've lost all that potential. You're still you. And what you do in order to like right align yourself and begin to create with the divine is going to make you healthier and younger and feel better and return your vitality and bring you back to that space of wonder that you were when you were a teenager. And that's worth it. That's why the priority is worth change. Even at this phase, it's worth changing your mind to a certain degree about certain things like that. Because watch and wait. You know, we are on the precipice of something quite remarkable in terms of clarity around that which we have lost. You know, and because this is about living. This is what this rune is, speaks of living. And with the sun card, this clarity, the sun is happy. You know, it's agency. It's the healed divine masculine. And what we've lost is what we're going to pull cards on right now with this. This is some powerful stuff. Okay, I'm going to get tarot cards and I'm going to need cards from this deck as well. This is like one of the longest readings, but you know what? I love it. This is coming through. It's really thorough. Odin is like, of course I'm long-winded. What do you think? But we've got like so far such a beautiful roadmap from Odin in so many ways to begin to officiate this like major shift of conscious transformation for ourselves and everybody else. This is some great stuff. Because what we're looking at for right now in the way of clarity about what we've lost and what it actually is to live, because it's twofold. There's a grief here and a need to look away from. So this is really the grief of lost potential and experience your potential being eaten alive over the course of a lifetime. It's a very painful experience. There's a lot of trauma there, and we're going to speak a little bit to that trauma, because this is, you know, so many things that we have to heal. We first heal by figuring out who we are, figuring out what will really nourish us, what will really help us to co-create, what will really bring that divine energy into our life experiences. But then but there's also a turning away from that grieving process in order to begin to take part in the creating process. And so that's what we're talking about here with this certainty and this clarity and this brightness and this agency around having the power to begin to get what you deserve and need and what's going to make you feel good, and actually having the power within you to start that like this very minute. You don't have to wait. You don't have to earn it. But let's look at this a little bit more, because I want to see why that this means looking at the grief, being fixated on the grief, being stuck to the pain. So let's take a look at that, because in relationship to fear, like what you need to know is that you do have dominion over the energies that are asking for your attention. It's all about your attention. You can do whatever you want with it, and sometimes you got to learn how to strengthen that. But you know, there's nothing to fear except that which wants to take your potential and your connection to your creative capacity, your connection to God. Allowing. Leo, the lover. So to allow is to encourage, see the potential in, clarifies, gives hopes to, compensates, intuits, tempers, responds, cycles, grows, realizes, and rewards. You know, this is actually, you know, when we have a sense of our rewards as being different, and, you know, when we have a sense of what we want as being different, it's actually a lot easier to access that which we have the creativity to give ourselves, and to also create home and community and a good, comfortable home too. I mean, like, you know, this isn't about like walking away from all of the earthly comforts. We've created that with our creative capacity as the human, like, it's supposed to be for all of us. This is a call for revolution. To a certain extent, you know? And let's see what Odin thinks that means. Let's find out. Let's find out. Huh, that's interesting. I love that. It's really cool. Justice. This is what it is, you know, when we talk about the arc of justice and bringing justice, like we start with ourselves, bringing justice to ourselves. Let's take a look now. How do we look away from the grief and because we've been conditioned to this grief, we've accepted this grief as a consequence of life. And the revolution, in so many ways, it's about breakthroughs in the way that we think. Just shovel a little more. I'm sorry if this is loud. I keep on meaning to go get like a tablecloth or something so that I can cut down on the shuffle sounds. The Tower card. Okay. Yeah. All right. That makes a lot of sense. So on the bottom of the deck, and you know, we keep seeing the Lovers peek out. The Lovers, that's what this card is right here. I don't know if you can see. The Lovers wants to come out all over this reading. I mean, it's just every time I shuffle, I seem to see the Lovers card. So this is really about a choice that we make towards our progress and towards our growth. It's a choice towards growth is essentially what we're talking about here. And so that's what this allowing means, making that choice towards growth. You know, to look away from the grief around lost potential is to first make the choice to stop seeing yourself as being just a pile of lost potential, to stop seeing that the years have washed away, to start thinking about your existence as that of a divine finite creature, one that can extend its life through you know, Odin is saying extend its life through spiritual means. Again, like that shouldn't confront anyone's, you know, situation in terms of going to the doctor or not going to the doctor. Go to the doctor. But you do have a starting point with this to start to see and experiment with changing your energy and changing your goals and start to grow again and let yourself grow again and see if that doesn't do something to health overall. So, you know, with the Tower card here and, you know, back to like the point of this whole spread is really when we let those institutions fall. It's a process of allowing, in some ways, the strongholds in our own life to begin to fall away. And so when we begin to look for potential and clarify, you know, through educating ourselves and spiritual practices, through changing the way we compensate ourselves in terms of what's going to nourish us and give us growth and give us wisdom and help us create with this incredible potential that we have. We understand that there's cycles, you know, but as we shift, you know, our focus is, of course, to have a wonderful, comfortable, protective home where we can birth things. You know, we need to be cared for. We need to be receptive. We need that sentimental, like, place where it's safe to be, to move in and out of introverted spaces. This is a family-oriented card. And so, you know, we allow our grief to give way to, let me get more cards, because the Tower is coming out as saying that the way that even relationships and family is structured and what we think of relationships and family, and again, this thing wants to, this is a orange citrine, I think. Someone want to look that up and leave it in the comments, because I mean, I am moving my arm, but like I still think that things happen for a reason. But with the Knight of Cups here at the bottom of the deck, this is like dig deep. Let yourself feel your depth all the way to the bottom. Because if we hover at the surface of the grief of what we lost, then we never take that deep dive all the way down to find out what is in the magic that's in the soil that is going to clear all of the water so that we can see right through it. And this is about like a revolution within the self, of letting yourself just go a lot deeper than, you know, the grief over the loss of potential thus far, that this needs to be retired in favor of a deep dive to something else, you know, something that we're going to discover and we're going to find, and entering that mystery within ourselves. That's the healing process right there. And that's also what's going to bring us into this stability around people and relationships, and bringing that creative stuff into people, into relationship and into community, because it's allowing community, you know, for ourselves by let's get some more cards, because I'm needing more cards. Odin. The World card there, it is about bringing in a new world, and with the Three of Pentacles, it's about building it together. So, you know, what we are feeling about our lives is where we're wanting to take our focus. This is a hard thing to say. So what we are feeling about our lives and focused on about the grief of our lives is what we need to take our focus away from. Because if we can stick to this focus that says, I'm not going to have enough, I'm running out of time, I'm never going to escape, I'm never going to escape. If we are convinced that we're never going to escape, then what do? We give in. And so this grief over the lost potential, if it tells us that we're never going to escape, then we've already given in, and the only thing that we can do is numb ourselves. And so one of the first things we can do to sort of pivot toward growth and pivot toward allowing this revolution around what it means to have what we want and have what we want be something that is going to serve ourselves and everyone else, is to understand that we have to take our eyes out of the story making around our pain and begin to use that story making capacity to create a story of how we get out, how we escape, what it means to escape. And we start to use all of these spiritual tools. You know, that this is basically what it ends up being, is, you know, how do we get to this clarity in terms of the journey of this life? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to acknowledge that the pain is there as a part of the story, but it is not the story. Failure is not the story. The failure is what you've been born into. The story is who you are as a tree, not the knife that jammed you into the ground. And so we're going to look away from our stories of loss in order to stop losing, so that we don't give in to just wanting to numb ourselves, because that's when that's really the battlefield. And this is the Three of Cups here. This is something that we do. We do this for ourselves, and we do this for the ability to be in communion with others. This is where the healing takes place, in communion with others. And the healing takes place in finding and creating spaces where people can experience this healing, and in creating these opportunities for yourself as well. You know, this is a group effort. We're all responsible for communicating with each other, even in the comment section. You know, the comment section, yeah, it boosts whatever. This is not what I mean. You know, like, really, this message actually would be helpful. It's helpful to me. And so if you're in the comment section, you're like, who wants to have like an impromptu Zoom? Like, it doesn't mean everybody's going to be able to make it, or that anyone's going to be able to make it. You're not doing to produce. You're doing just to throw out. I'm seeing a fishing rod. Throw it out and see if it catches. If it doesn't catch fish, go back, and that's a vegetable night. You know, like that we get up every morning with an anticipation of finding something new, or making a new connection, or bringing something into the world. And we don't really have to work too hard at, like, if we're not trying to be valued by what we can produce, if we know that we have value despite what we produce, then we can produce and see where it leads us. You know, there are divine detours. There are periods of isolation. There are definitely these moments in life where we're meant to find ourselves by looking in and then bringing that light out. And so, you know, when we think about what it means to heal, you want to start doing this work of being the student and the teacher, and having that test itself out into whatever leadership position is created by you and for you. And you have one, you know, but it just starts with being able to think about, you know, you're doing this, you're creating this home for yourself. You know, where you're outside of your story of pain, because you know that you're needed to create something, to take that creative potential that is godlike, you know, and the fact that you are the culmination of all of the survival of your ancestors' magic, and to bring that magic into creating a new world with others. And that means that part of healing is starting to create avenues of relief from isolation instead of avenues of relief from responsibility. And that doesn't mean that means looking for places to hang out and interact with people in a learning capacity, and in a growing capacity, and an exchanging of your personal gifts capacity. So looking for those venues of connection, but it also means creating venues of connection, and not letting whether or not people respond in the way that you hope that they do be the determine what you're trying to create with the divine by way of connection. Like, do you understand? It's a little bit tricky, because there is a success and failure rate to it. But if you're not thinking of it in terms of production and survival, that releases a lot of pressure. And I'm being shown, like, kids hanging out at school, playing in the park. They're all creating together, aren't they? And those creations that they make when they play, like, bring in the, you know, other people. What are you doing? What are you playing? What you making? Like, I'll be the king. Let's do this game. You know, if you have an attitude that goes into the playground for the sake of creating in this space, you know, with whatever, then you're less likely to, like, show up and be like, I have an hour and I have to get my lunch by singing and dancing. Oh my gosh, like, how am I going to get the audience to be here to have this playful experience? Like, this is where we want to just take some of that pressure off. That's what you've been told about what your creative capacity is there for. Your creative capacity is not there to produce something. It's there to give you a way to connect, to give and receive. And so let's see if there's anything. Right. because this lack mentality of like the overlord of I am not enough, like when we take ourselves out, and this is very difficult, and you know, this is where we need our magic. This is where we might need more than just like what we have in front of us. This is where we have to do the digging around what it means to overcome some of the opposition. I'll tell you right now, the more creative potential you have, the more likely that when you were 5 minutes old, something sort of got a hold of that like sense of that field of energy and the capacity within it, and decided, I'm going to just hang around and make sure that this thing believes itself to be under my, you know, this is saying you need me and I'm going to block you off from everything else. And in order for you to have power and influence and a platform and creative capacity and creative resources, you need me. You have to work for me. You see the way that that shadow is talking to this person? You see what this person is doing in terms of believing that it's only as big as this shadow doesn't even exist. This shadow is saying, you are so small. Look how big I am. You are so small. This shadow is only there because this person is standing there. This person is taller, more powerful, and more able to do worlds of good. This shadow that's standing over it, making you feel small, is just a shadow. And so when we tell ourselves stories of defeat at the hands of the shadow is this external structure. But it's still like, you are still bigger than it in terms of your creative capacity. And so, I mean, that's the moment that we're in. And so, yeah, sometimes we need our magic to get this out of our way. Sometimes we need our magic to sort of like bring that light within so that it begins to diminish the shadow around us. You know, there's a whole process that's in play, but, you know, ultimately it has everything to do with getting in touch with the spiritual aspect of who we are, our connection to the divine, like what has created what our magic is and how to use it through like teaching and learning. And so we do that, you know, we do that ourselves, and then we try to bring this into community. It's not just for you, right? But you're not even going to be satisfied if it's just for you, you know? And so this revolution, you know, has to do with like picking your head up from like the way in which you have had your potential stolen, the way in which you have been shut down, and the opposition that you have faced, and understand that when we begin to just even think about the fact that like we can like spiritually grow our way out of this, that we do begin to do just that. And if you can't, you know, if community isn't available to you right now because you're living someplace where there's a dominant way of thinking, and that's, you know, and your way of thinking isn't welcome, there's so many reasons why we get cut off, because the whole thing is, everything's designed to separate us. Bringing your head out of the story that says, I'm not going to connect with any people, and that and nothing I make is going to be useful to anybody because of where I'm stuck in my life. These changes aren't going to happen overnight. But they start with you thinking, picking your head up and starting to tell yourself a different story about who you are, what you need, and what you're capable of. And that's the only homework assignment you have to bring transformation, because it starts that domino effect where something really big, a really big shadow, begins to diminish quickly under the scrutiny of your light that you're creating from within. So you are not powerless in any of this. And when we talk about what it means to, you know, this is the 8 of Swords and the 6 of, oh, I love this. You know, these don't have signifiers, so, you know, it goes back and forth. It just kind of whatever wants to come through. But with the 6 of Cups, and this speaks of the 6 of Cups to me, and this really does speak of the 8 of Swords, even though it's also the 8 of Coins in some ways. This is about working your way out of a position that you feel you are stuck in, but that you're not truly stuck in, that there is an avenue out. So this is a deck where the signifiers are supposed to change and you're supposed to use it in a certain intuitive way. But the 8 of Swords traditional card is a woman standing in the middle. She's got a blindfold on, and there are 8 swords all around her, and she feels like she's trapped in a circle of swords. But the reality is that there's a path, that the 8 swords leave a path. If she were just to walk straight, she would be outside of the ring of swords. She's got a blindfold on though, so she doesn't think that there's a way out, but there absolutely is a way out. And so when we understand, when we like look at this, you know, this is about ice and being frozen. When we begin to let the fear that has made us frozen thaw, when we start to understand that we aren't actually trapped, and see, how do you make the frozen trauma response, the fear that makes you feel like you're trapped, how do you begin to get out of that? Well, you begin to entertain the possibility that you know that you feel trapped, that you can't see the way out, but that you know from that place of intuition, from that place very deep within you, that there is a way out. You acknowledge to yourself that there is a way out. You stop giving all of your energy to the God that says there's no way out, and you say there is a way out. I may not be able to see it, and I may not know what it is right now, but there is a way out. And when you do that, this stronghold, this will begin to melt, and you will be less frozen, just with the acknowledgement that there is salvation, there is a way out, there is a God, there is a system of order. Don't see it yet, but you're going to let this thaw. And you're going to let this freeze thaw by saying, I know that it's not the absolute truth. I know that I am not actually trapped. I know that it will be revealed to me as I acknowledge that I'm not trapped. And this is where this idea of equal give and take, and really being able to have, like, where the effort that you put out ends up coming back to you, where there is fairness, where exchange isn't tainted by exploitation and power over, power under, where hierarchy is something that's like an organic learning process, and like division of labor as a result of that organic learning and teaching. Hierarchy is a system of organization that doesn't have to be exploitive and cruel, but in the consumer sort of way of doing it, where you consume only to be consumed yourself, like that is a very disgusting, horrible way of like being in hierarchy, because it's tiers of slavery. So when we admit that there's a way out of these tiers of slavery, even if it's not arrived yet, but there's a process at play, then we begin to feel hope again. And that's like the first piece of revolution that there is just beginning to allow for that hope, beginning to let that hope bloom into something more by way of what we're learning and what we're teaching and what we're creating. And so this is where, you know, your creativity comes into play. And let's just get some cards on this. Because you're being told to go to war with your creative capacity, and that you're being told you're going to win. That is what, you know, that is connecting with the divinity that is all powerful. And that does create with endless, there's no lack in that. There's always ingenuity. And so it's opening up your creative capacity to and allow for a belief system that tells you that your time spent learning, teaching, and making is where all the value is. Okay. Okay. Odin is saying absolutely 100%. You can overcome any obstacle. We can overcome any obstacle. Beginning to approach our magic in this way is the first step, and it goes very quickly. That's a beautiful thing. You know, working really hard to make a future for your kids where they have enough resources. Like this is, if you find yourself to be like in a really bad financial situation where you're always just trying to get the ends to meet, and you want to leave your kids some kind of inheritance, you want to have them to have a better quality of life, you know, to begin to think of yourself as being like, that this kind of work is giving them a true inheritance, and that you haven't wasted anything, and you haven't, you know, like this is speaking to somebody who's a parent who feels like that they don't have resources, and so, you know, what Odin is saying is like doing this work is the best inheritance that you could possibly give them, because it creates a better, like, yeah, just learning how to be in this way is giving them their magic, and their magic is more valuable than anything that you could stockpile, really. Think on your feet means being spiritual is not something that you have to disassociate to do. And that when you have to show up to work and it's like, ugh, you know, and you're dealing with people, to bring your magic into everything that you do, to bring that creative capacity into every interaction, you know, and not think about it as like, I'm giving my energy away. If you're connected to the divine, then you have a amount, then there's not like a cap on your energy. If you're giving out of your need, if you're giving out of your deprivation, then you're going to feel pretty exhausted after a 15-minute conversation about somebody else's tooth. But if you get up in the morning and you are drinking from the well of your own divinity, and you are communing with your ancestors, and you are learning something new, and you walk into your workplace and you're talking about what you're learning, and you're having this experience, and you're looking at people and thinking like, there's an opportunity to create in this relationship with this person, I wonder what that's going to be, and bringing that divinity into everywhere you go. Again, this is what ends up, you become a beacon. It means also being present. And being present with people is not, and being present with yourself. Am I trying to domineer? Am I trying to bring my viewpoint over somebody else? Am I considering somebody else the enemy? Am I considering what they were trying to do against me? You know, am I fighting things that are trying to take from me? Or are, like, you know, exactly, like, that's not being present. That's living in the past and the future. Being present is, I'm right here. I'm connected to the divine. I have the ability to figure out what to do about this, especially in co-creation with the divine, and I'm going to be creative, and I'm, you know, like all this stuff. So bring it into the present moment, and don't think that you have to disassociate to be spiritual, because you don't. You know, that's this idea that, like, yes, you want to meditate, absolutely you do. That's prayer, and that's getting into a prayerful state, and that's bringing the anointing of the divine energy. You want to learn, you want to interact with spirit, and that's your private time with that's like very good practice to have. But ultimately, you take your spirituality everywhere you go, and you bring it into your present moment, and you be the witness to your experience as you are having it. Because again, this liberation, the spiritual liberation, is something that it's not only for you. And the way that we starve the monster of consuming and allow people to really begin to live is by living that example, standing in that gap between where we were and where we're going, and saying, here's the bridge. And because truth does transcend illusion, and the power of your words will speak for themselves. The authority in whatever you're saying is going to be what validates it, almost. I mean, it's valid as it is. But I understand that as you teach and as you learn and as you convey, that which is wisdom, that which has the authority of wisdom, will be made apparent in its longevity. That which falls away as part of the learning process, and you just let it go. You're not going to be too hard on yourself. And so when you are creating meaning and making meaning and putting meaning first and forth, when you're showing people stuff, you don't have to be right. You can be in process and explain it that way. In fact, you should, because you're always in process. It's part of this. And so, you know, this creativity, it comes in the present moment. It's something that you make a lifestyle of in terms of what you value and how you learn. And the truth of whatever you're doing and learning and figuring out as you deliver it will make itself known. And that truth has its own authority. And when you're learning from people, you're going to test this. Does it feel truth? Does it give me peace, or does it agitate me? Agitation, there's something off. Like peace, there's something true about this. Maybe not all of it, but something. And that you make your dreams come true, that you have the power to do this, that you begin to operate in the spirit of growth and transformation and creativity through your connection to the divine. And that's what does the healing. And so when we think about, I don't know how I'm going to heal, I don't know how I'm going to get better from this, I don't know how I'm going to overcome this, how we heal the world, how we heal ourselves, is we start to dream. And then we start to interact with those dreams, and we start to like be, and Odin is saying the stories of our ancestors, these stories held them in the way that they could step into the stories and create from those stories within their lives. And to think that we have to separate the, you know, the spiritual aspects and the spiritual stories from, you know, it's co-creation. And so when there's a story about bravery and your God, you know, in this capacity, acting like that through the ancestral mythology or whatever it ends up being, like, what's your place in that? What does it mean for you to be in that benevolence that you see, you know, foretold in the way that your ancestors did it? What does it mean for you to step into, take up that mantle of that line of growth, right? And so this thing is it's like Odin saying, you've got it at your fingertips. You've got this revolution at your fingertips, and you can push this revolution in a way that isn't going to fail. Force, you know, using their arena, using their game. I'm seeing a playbook, using the playbook of the opposition and consuming and how to like work our way out. That's going to always fail. That's correct. Everyone's correct. That is kind of a hopeless situation. That's a failing structure to play by those rules and work in those rules. You don't have to break the rules. Spirituality is a nice little loophole that you don't have to break the rules, but you can begin to play a new game. And so that's really what Odin is calling us to do. And I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to get a few cards that really just speak to where we're going with all of this. And then I'm going to end it at that. because this was an amazing message, and I think it's 4 hours. I mean, once I load this all up. Oh, right, Odin's like you. So when we're not quite, you know, when we talk about what it means to take off this armor and take dominion over our attention in our lives, we're speaking to this is strength, that our strength is in our spirituality, and that our strength is in being able to take off the structure and walk just very clearly, you know, towards progress. And, you know, that when we stand in our power and when we you know, release ourselves incrementally from this like tiered slavery, that what we create, what is yet to come, will ultimately be our salvation. And we might not see it right now because we're in this phase of taking off the armor. But as we take off that armor, what is ahead of us? What is ahead of us is what we create of this moment going forward. And we've got a lot of instructions on what it's going to be to make that space for ourselves. Okay. And this is spiritual. You know, start with allowing your connection to the divine be something that you very much consider a value worth prioritizing in terms of your attention. Because as you do that, you know, you will begin to heal this feeling of powerlessness, this feeling like your creative power can't manifest anything. Like once we begin to understand that the spirit, that God, that source, that creative energy can inform us on solutions around what it means to begin to use this power, and to understand our magic, and to allow that to really affect whether or not our creativity can manifest. To communicate what we come to by way of discernment from the learning that we're doing, that this is everything. This is the revolution. And so Odin is calling us to like the battlefield of our own minds, and our own hearts and our own spirituality, to do the work that needs to be done. And I'm excited to watch these readings because like there's a lot that came through. But so I want to just take this time and for all of us to just thank Odin for the wisdom that he's brought through, about, you know, just reconnecting with the ancestral gods and releasing and stepping into this power and stepping into this freedom. So I want us all just to take a collective moment of like, thank you, Odin, because Odin just brought a lot for us to work with and think about and learn from. I always encourage people to go ahead and put questions below. I do plan on getting like a 5 or 10 and doing a Q&A, but I also, what I do with those questions really is when I'm working with the deity like Odin, we read the questions. I write them down, I print them up, and I put them in my little thing. You know, we read the questions before we started the reading. So if you didn't get any of your questions answered from this reading that you left from a previous reading, drop it down below. And the outstanding questions I will like get through in readings to come, or I will, because a lot of the questions were like how to overcome feeling inferior, how to work with creative magic, how to conquer fear. I think I got a lot of that. And to the question of whether or not you're an oracle, like you are connected to the divine and you end up being that expression of the divine in the world. So yeah, you are. So any kind of questions you might have, put them down below. I will get to them, and whatever deity decides to work with us will, you know, come through on that. And I thank you for being here, and I am honored to have done this reading, and I hope to see you again soon.